What's up everybody, this is Dave here with Comics Games Life, and today's video is on the highly anticipated, long overdue Batman Gargoyle of Gotham issue number 3. Now there are several story arcs that are happening at the same time in this series, and in this issue we're going to see where some of those storylines intersect with one another. We have Jim Gordon and Batman working together to find a serial killer in Gotham who is taking out Gotham's elite, and this led Batman to investigate a cult called the Stadgeist, and Jim to the home of a priest where he's there to interview him, and we find out that he isn't just some weak old man, but he actually transforms into some sort of moth-like creature at the same time and goes by the name of Mother. And just before Mother kills Jim, he is saved by a character who calls herself the Virgin. And we also have a reporter who goes by the name of Nia, who's taken to the streets to report on Gotham City's homeless community who's been plagued with violence and disappearances. And she's also started a viral movement called the Speak Up For Them movement. And last but not least, we have the homicidal maniac who goes by the name of Crytoon, who's just escaped police custody. So let's first start off with Jim Gordon and the Virgin. So after the fight that took place in the priest's apartment, Jim now has Virgin on her knees with his gun pointed in her face. And he wants some answers because there's a whole lot of supernatural stuff that's going on. But she continues with those antics as she shows him her supernatural powers and begins to speak to him telepathically, which caused him to freak out and almost shoot her in the face. So at this point, he's done. All he wants to do is arrest her and take her back to GCPD. But she pulls no punches and tells him that if you take me there, we're both going to be dead. So Jim has a decision to make, whether to follow procedure and take her in, or listen to the advice of someone who could possibly literally stab him in the back. Because from what we learned in issue number 2, she was the one who's been murdering all of Gotham's elite, where she used special spiked gauntlets to stab these people in precise energy points in their bodies, which causes them to become paralyzed and eventually suffocate to death. Now we're going to take a look at the situation that Crytoon has got himself in. Now if you remember back in issue number 2, just before he escaped police custody, the officers who had him detained knew who he was and who he worked for, and had plans to kill him so that they can take his place amongst the ranking of the Stadgeist, that religious cult that seems to be in control of all the craziness that's been going on in these past 2 issues. So after breaking out, he made his way over to a trailer park where he seems to be hiding in somebody's shed, but he's not doing such a good job of it because the kid who lives in that trailer walks over to him with the hopes of telling him a joke. Now if you take a look at this kid, he looks out of his mind. And now this is supposed to be Little Joker. Now we know that Rafael Grampa has spoken about this character, saying that he's going to be the embodiment of evil in this series. Now we could tell right here that there's something definitely off with him. He's stepping up to Crytoon, who's in a prison orange jumpsuit. His hand is completely bloodied after being shoved down someone's throat. So he's got the appearance of someone you don't normally see every day. And so this kid, who apparently goes by the name Joe, is trying to make friends with Crytoon, and he's drawing pictures and he plays a game with them. And he tells Crytoon, I'm going to draw this picture and then I'll give it to you and then you finish drawing the picture. And while Crytoon is finishing this artwork, this kid tells him this twisted joke about a clown and a missing child. But when Crytoon gives back the picture, we see that he added some disturbing flair to it by adding a butcher's knife, as well as writing over where it says Joe and adding the letters so that it says Little Joker. And this kid loves it. He's just soaking up all the bad vibes. And not too long after this, the police show up investigating the disappearance of Crytoon, and they came to the right place. So first they go to the door and start speaking to the man who lives in the trailer. But then Little Joker shows up with his face all painted, spouting some bad words to the police officers, and while one of the officers is about to correct him, he notices some blood on the ground. That leads to the shed where Crytoon is currently hiding out. And this cop doesn't walk over there stealth like trying to get the drop on Crytoon. He runs over there screaming freeze with his gun pointed in the direction of where Crytoon currently is. But that cop is only to be met with a sickle to the chest, and the disturbing and twisted Little Joker is loving every moment of this madness. Now once the other officer sees what's going on, he goes ahead and pulls his gun as well, but Crytoon is too fast and spikes him in the head. But the fight isn't done yet because police officer number 1 has a little bit of life left in him. So he proceeds to draw his weapon and aim at Crytoon. But his newfound sadistic sidekick slowly stabs his knife into the temple of the police officer, all the while in hysterics. Now this kid is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, so much so that even Crytoon is blown away by it, and he doesn't even know what to say. And he wants to leave this kid right where he found him so he can make his way back to Gotham City. But the dad, who we find out actually isn't his dad, pleads with Crytoon to take this kid with him. He said that some deranged clown dropped him off here and never came back to pick him up. He even makes a bargain with him. He says, if you take the kid, I'll get rid of these 2 bodies and I won't tell anybody you were ever here. So Crytoon takes a second to think about it, looks into the face of his deranged disciple, and off they both go back to Gotham City. So real quick before we get to Batman's story, we're going to check in with Nia Garcia, that reporter that I mentioned earlier, the one who's been spreading the word about the Speak for Them movement, referring to the homeless people in Gotham. Now, not too long ago, she had an interaction with Bruce Wayne, where Bruce pretty much shut down everything that she said and then called her a brat. Fortunately for her, she was able to catch this on video, and she put him on full blast for the city to see. Now, this has created a social divide even more so, because now the rich are looking at Bruce Wayne as almost like their hero, and now the poor are looking at her as if she was their savior. But the upper crust has plenty of resources, so they do some damage control, and then they put out a full press smear campaign. And they paint her as a grifter who's tied to money laundering and all sorts of stuff that's not true. And the worst part about it, the people of Gotham are actually believing in this. So much so they become angry at the sight of her, which leads to some passengers on a subway train that she was riding, calling her out and trying to start a fight with her. But nothing happens to her and the person that she's with, who I'm assuming is her boyfriend. Now, as they go to another compartment to wait for their stop, let's rewind the tape and pick up where Batman left off in issue number 2, where we find him in the middle of a Stadgeist cult meeting, where just after getting into a big fight at the top of the Hotel Townsend, he and one of the other people that he was fighting crash through the clock tower that sits on top of the building, and they come to a painful landing where I'm not sure if the other guy even survived it, but Batman seems to have hurt his arm, possibly even breaking it during the fall. So you have all these cult members decked out in cloaks, but at the head of the aisle you have the man in charge, this creepy bearded guy with a mask, who seems to have been expecting Batman to make his appearance on that very night. And Batman is keenly aware that he's in a dangerous situation, so he nonchalantly presses a button on his belt. Now this activates an emergency distress call that sends a signal out to all of the people within his circle of trust, saying that he needs help on the double. But not knowing when or if even help is going to be on the way, he's got to make sense of the situation that he's in and try to survive it if possible. So he begins by asking the guy at the head of the line who he is. And this old guy sitting in a chair, who's obviously a villain based on the way that he's dressed, tells Batman that he is Dr. Geist. Now, the word Geist is from the German word meaning ghost. So essentially he's Dr. Ghost, and he says that he is the Grand Master of the Stadgeist. Now that translation means ghost of the city or spirit of the city. Now it seems like all the high-ranking members within this cult have that title of Geist attached to their name in some shape or form. Like he refers to Crytoon as the crying Geistman, and just a few panels away we're going to see another person with a similar name and rank. But first, some dialogue between the two, because Dr. Geist is telling Batman, you shouldn't be asking who I am, you should be asking who you are. And then Batman goes to repeat the nursery rhyme that's pretty much been repeated throughout this series about the demon cub breaking his wing, becoming the devil, and killing the man. And so if you haven't already guessed it, the demon cub becoming the devil, killing the man, that obviously is Batman as a young boy suffering tragedy and loss, and then becoming the devil, aka Batman, and killing the man, aka Bruce Wayne, which is an underlying plot that has been played out throughout this series somewhat, where Batman is essentially trying to kill off Bruce Wayne, and he has everything staged. He has news articles ready for Bruce Wayne to die in a car accident. Now, Alfred, of course, is very much not for this, and you can see him at times trying to convince Bruce Wayne of this by throwing subtle hints that Bruce Wayne should be more involved in his foundation and his charities and his businesses. But Batman isn't about hearing that. He wants to be Batman 24/7. So we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. As for right now, as if things weren't weird enough in this situation, you have a couple of people who are in cloaks whispering to one another, and they're saying things like, oh man, like, what do we do now? I don't know, we just follow the plan. So obviously they don't really belong there. And while they're coming to a decision trying to figure out what to do next, Batman makes his attack against Dr. Geist. But the old man is quicker than Quicksilver and moves out of the way, and then delivers a needle strike to the back of Batman's neck, which triggers an electric response from the weapon that he used and puts Batman in some serious pain. And Dr. Geist is spouting some stuff about dark energy and dark aura. And to better explain this, when he was younger, Bruce Wayne, after his parents had passed away, he was very angry. So in order to help him, Alfred took him to Arkham Asylum, where he had a therapist who was named Dr. Charles Quentin. And he put Bruce through a series of therapies that made him suppress this anger and this hatred. Now, this Dr. Quentin, he wasn't only taking care of Bruce, he was in charge of the entire children's wing at Arkham Asylum. And he was giving all of these children who were probably at their worst point in life, brainwashing type of therapies. Now, on the outside, it looked like that he was trying to help them, but he really wasn't. He had dark ulterior motives, which is the creation of what we see right now, this cult. So after about 20 years or so of messing with these kids, he drops off the face of the planet, takes all the records of all the children that he has given therapy to, and he's taking these children, I don't know if by force or he coerced them into becoming a part of this cult, and essentially turning them loose on Gotham, creating the chaos and the menace that we see throughout the city thus far. The drugs, the homelessness, the destruction, the robberies, the murder, the prostitution, all of that stuff seems to have come from this guy and this religious movement that he's pouring into Gotham. And as later on, we find out that some of these kids actually have special abilities that he totally takes advantage of and uses for his own desires. Okay, but now back to Batman. So while he's somewhat incapacitated, Dr. Geist calls upon this guy named Geistman Wunder. And this big behemoth of a dude with these two wicked looking blades comes creeping up. And so what Dr. Geist wants to do to Batman, he wants Batman to release this dark aura or the anger and that hate that he has bottled up inside, because it seems like it's supposed to give him possibly some sort of supernatural abilities as well, like enhanced strength and enhanced speed. But Batman's resisting because I think deep down he understands what's at stake if he lets all this stuff go. So the fight with Wunder ends pretty quickly with Batman slicing open like the side of his ribs. But after that, it is a battle royale, and Batman just tears into all the cult members. And those three cult members who are whispering to one another, well, they rip off their hoods because they were not part of this Stadgeist to begin with. They were actually infiltrators. So once Batman did his thing, which they weren't expecting, they take this opportunity to jump into the fray and start knocking some heads. Now, everybody in this room is totally caught off guard by these three, but it seems like Dr. Geist has had enough of it and delivers one more electric needle stab to Batman. Now, this sends him flying through one of the walls, and this time he doesn't shake it off. He's out like a light. Now, the only thing between the Stadgeist and Batman are these three strangers. And the way that they figure it, hey, we don't like these cult members. Batman doesn't like these cult members. So let's come and help out Batman. So the big guy picks up Batman, throws him through one of the windows, and the other three parkour their way out of the building in the same manner. Now, before they left, they spot some barrels. Now, these barrels contain TNT. Now, this is their mission. Their mission was to infiltrate this cult, find the explosives, and somehow get rid of them, because these guys are going to use these bombs for some big bad business. But with all the commotion and the chaos, they couldn't do it, but at least they know that they're there, and they were able to save Batman, and they were able to get away without being captured or killed. And so eventually they make their way down to the sewers where their home base is. Now, if you stop right here for a moment, you're going to see some familiar faces, because this girl and this little kid with the braids, they made their faces known back in issue number 2. Now, they're a part of the homeless community that was receiving food from the charity members out there, handing out different things at one of the rallies that Nia was speaking at. And so they bring Batman to their big boss, some guy who goes by the name of Sage. And they bring him into this room with all sorts of computers and weird medical objects and things like that. Now here, again, I love Rafael Grampa's artwork. I swear, he puts detail into things that really don't need to really have detail in them. Like if you look way over here in the corner underneath one of the word bubbles, yeah, there's a head in that jar. Like, what's that about? Why did he even need to draw that? Like, what's the story behind that? But regardless, it's there. The art and the colors and everything about this series, to me, is a total work of art. If you haven't picked up any of the previous issues, if you want to get caught up in the story, go ahead and listen to my videos about it. But if you want to pick up the comics, do so, because they are gorgeous. Now, back to the story. So this guy Sage, he seems to be on the up and up in regards to Batman, his dark aura, and his overall condition. So to treat his wounds and help him out, he disrobes him, he takes out the mask, he takes out the cowl. So all these people on the ground, or at least the ones who are in this office, now they know that he's Bruce Wayne. So the cat's out of the bag there. But while he's on this table and Sage has all these computers hooked up to him, Bruce is going through some old memories that have been suppressed. Because now we get to see the origin of that nursery rhyme about the demon cub and the broken wing and the becoming the devil and killing the man. And it's actually something his mother would tell Bruce when he was scared at night, because he would look out his window and he would see this Batman. Now, this Batman was actually a gargoyle that sat on top of one of the structures in Wayne Manor. And his mother would tell him to not be afraid of it. That gargoyle, it can be scary, but they're there to protect us from evil. And she goes on to repeat a story that her grandfather would tell her. And it goes like this. a demon cub falls to earth and breaks its wing, and a man saves the cub, and the cub becomes a gargoyle. And in gratitude, the gargoyle spends its time protecting the man from evil. So that's how the story really goes. Now, where it gets twisted is while Bruce was under the care of Dr. Quentin, during one of his intense therapy sessions, Bruce begins to recite this story that his mother told him. But once it gets to the part about the gargoyle protecting the man from evil, Dr. Quentin chimes in and changes it. And he tells Bruce that the demon cub becomes a devil and kills the man. And he forces Bruce to repeat it until eventually that's all that Bruce remembers. Now, I love the way this story plays out because you get to see a different perspective on how Bruce Wayne decided to become Batman. Here in this storyline, there's no bat in the picture at all, hence the name Gargoyle of Gotham, because the Batman that he is inspired by is a gargoyle that he sees on top of Wayne Manor, the thing that looks evil and looks creepy but is there to protect those who are innocent. Now you can see why Bruce has this internal battle going on, where he has this idea of the Batman being this thing that protects people, but at the same time, he's been coerced into thinking that the Batman is there to corrupt and to destroy. And while he's lying on this medical table, all this stuff is just going through his mind, but he's starting to wake up. But outside the room in the sewerways, Sage is talking to Lady Rat. So these guys, they call themselves the Rats, R-A-T-Z. So I don't know if Lady Rat is just like a general term for her or if that's her actual name or nickname. But anyway, that's what Sage calls her. And she's telling him about the concerns that she has about their fellow brothers and sisters, the other homeless people out there in Gotham, because many of them are still missing. And at least a dozen or so have actually been found dead. They were the ones who were put into slave work in the underground black market TNT factory that we saw back in issue number 1, the one that had exploded, but before the explosion, Crytoon got into a fight with Batman, and just before that, Crytoon actually killed all of these slave workers. It was pretty brutal, and it totally set the pace for this dark and violent story that we're in the middle of reading. So the last thing Lady Rat tells Sage is that they found the TNT. Now this gets his ears perked up because he's telling her, okay, assemble the rest of the rats. And then they go back into that medical room where Bruce was laying down, and Bruce is gone. He's missing. Only thing there is the dude who was watching him, that big dude, he is knocked out cold on the floor. But of course, from our perspective, we can see that Bruce has made his way up into the, I guess, rafters, hiding out. And just as they're about to search for him, he pounces on them. But Lady Rat is no easy opponent as she takes Bruce down to the ground, throws him against a bunch of computers, and eventually puts him out cold. So, side note here, I know we don't have a Robin in this story, but if you were to look at her jacket, even though she's called Lady Rat and she's part of the group called the Rats, tell me that that does not look like a Robin symbol on her jacket. Maybe a little foreshadowing here. Maybe she may partner up with Batman in issue number 4. Again, I'm not sure if this is going to go beyond issue number 4, but kind of a cool nod. I think that's what they're trying to imply here. Maybe not her becoming Robin, but just kind of putting a little bit of Robin in this story. But moving on. Her, the dude who was knocked out on the floor, and the third guy who was with them at the Stadgeist meeting, well, all three of them end up on a rooftop, and they're there to put an end to the transport that's currently taking the TNT barrels to their final location. But fortunately for them, they are not alone because James Gordon has also pulled up on the scene. Now, a little bit of craziness has happened to him prior to this point. See, after he had that encounter with Virgin, where she gave him the warning that if you were to take me to the police station, both of us are going to end up dead. So he was left with a decision to make. And in the next chronological scene, we find him at the police station, but Virgin is nowhere in sight. And he goes into his office, plugs in his phone because it's dead. As soon as it comes to life, he's getting that blaring bat signal saying, hey, this is Batman. I need some help. And James is also given the location to where this signal first went off, which was the Hotel Townsend. So he makes his way over to the garage behind the hotel. So this is also where the rats are, and this is where everyone seems to be congregating. And as Gordon approaches the garage, he sees the TNT being transferred from the building into trucks. And apparently he failed out of ninja school because he totally draws attention to himself, which causes these lunatics to open fire on him. He jumps for cover, the truck speeds off, the rats see the truck taking off, and they make a go for the truck. And the small one with the pointy nose, he gets overzealous. He actually latches onto it, pulls one guy out, only to be shot in the chest by the driver. Then you got Gordon in his car in hot pursuit of the truck, and the guy that the other guy threw out landed on the hood of his car, and they're in a firefight on either side of his windshield until finally he comes crashing into a convenience store. Now this criminal cult guy definitely has some broken limbs to go along with the shards of glass that had been forcibly inserted into his body, but still is dead set on trying to kill Gordon. Fortunately for Gordon, the shopkeeper flexes his 2A amendment rights and blows a hole in the guy's head. And just as Jim is telling that guy to calm down, out of the blue, the spirit of Virgin pops up. And she's giving him the quick breakdown of what is going on. She tells him that ever since she was a child, she's had paranormal abilities, hence the vision that she is forcefully putting into his mind. And she goes on to tell him about Dr. Quentin, about the children that he manipulated and trained up to be these Stadgeist members, about the ranking members like Mother and Crytoon and Wunder and even herself. And she goes on to further explain that once she realized that he was making monsters, she had to stop him. So she betrayed the Stadgeist, went on to kill the children who were members of the cult that were brought up under his therapy in Arkham Asylum. And that's why she was there at Mother's apartment, because she was there to kill him. And she needs to finish her quest. She needs to finish this crusade, because once the bells ring, if you remember back in issue number 2 when Virgin was fighting Mother and how Mother said that she won't be able to stop the bells, because once these bells go off, something cataclysmic is going to happen in Gotham City. So she's telling Jim through this spiritual connection that they have that he needs to let her go, like ASAP. And that's when he snaps out of his stupor. Come to find out he was in the middle of traffic this whole time. Luckily, he wasn't run down by anybody. And next we see him at this storage unit where he actually had her held captive. So he never took her to Gotham PD. And the last thing that we see of him is he's telling her that he believes everything that she's saying. Now let's take a trip back to the underground, because there's a little bit more of Bruce's story that we have left to tell in this issue. So after his last outburst, Sage had put him in an actual prison cell, and Bruce, definitely not liking this position, he finds one of the rats who were drinking out in the hallway and convinces them to come close to the cell, where he ends up grabbing him and screaming at him to let him out of here. And that's when Sage appears, and he tells him that if you don't let him go, you're never going to get out of there. You're going to die in that cell. So Bruce, of course, lets him go. And then he looks at Dr. Sage and tells him, like, what did you do to me? Are you working with Dr. Geist? What did you put in my head? And Sage says, I didn't do anything to you. I'm not working with him. And matter of fact, what I did was save you. I stabilized whatever awakening or whatever trauma that Dr. Geist did to you. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be alive right now. And then Sage tells Batman, I'm afraid of whatever Dr. Geist has awakened in you, and then walks away. But of course, the Dark Knight is sly, slick, and wicked, because during that little scuffle with the drunk guy, he actually stole his crucifix necklace. And so of course, the world's greatest detective is going to file that thing down into a makeshift key and then eventually escape. Funny thing enough, he is not done stealing from that drunk guy, because he takes his hat and his coat, and apparently he's not going to need it because this guy's passed out drunk anyway. And he makes his way through the rats community as well as through the various subway tunnels, and eventually he makes it to civilization, and he finds a subway platform full of people. Now, Bruce Wayne in this series is kind of a douchebag. He's totally full with entitlement, because he's telling people, hey, I need your phone, give it to me, because honestly he really does. He needs to get contact with Alfred like right here, right now. But the people in Gotham are like, I'm not giving my stuff to a homeless guy, because that's exactly what he looks like. And he's yelling and he's asking people for help, but nobody's paying him any mind. And then in this next panel, there's this moment where Bruce sees this homeless person asleep on the subway platform, and the entire world is whited out around them. And in this moment, we're seeing him starting to grow personally, getting a taste of the unseen community that is the homelessness in Gotham. How those who are in need of help aren't receiving help, because those who are able to help are blind to them. But this epiphany and moment of clarity comes to an abrupt end, because Bruce is starting to notice something, and that something happens to be the decapitated heads from all the innocent people who were walking around, because that guy Wunder is running through the crowd cutting people's heads off. I mean, he's doing it effortlessly. This guy is a head cutting machine. And then finally he gets to Bruce, and he taps into some of that childhood trauma, performs some acrobatics, and then landing a front kick to the face of Wunder. Now this knocks him far off the subway platform and onto the rails themselves. And he gets up ready for a round 2, but his foot is caught in the train tracks. But let's stop for a second here and look at this guy's face. I mean, I wasn't expecting a cover model under this thing, but I would love to know the story about how he got to look like that. But once he realizes his foot is stuck, he reaches out for Batman in an attempt to gain some sympathy so he can receive some help. And it seems like for a second, Batman was about to possibly even help him. But instead of doing anything, he does nothing and lets the train just run him over. Now blood splatters all over him. And as the train is coming to a slow stop and he's sitting there covered in blood in a homeless man's clothes with bandages on his face, look who's right there to meet him. Nia Garcia. Now hopefully there's going to be some sort of reconciliation or some sort of teamwork between these two, because ironically they both want the same thing. They want Gotham to be rid of the crime and the corruption, and for the hurting people of Gotham City to get the help that they need. But in the very last panel, we see clearly that the bells are ringing, which means that the Stadgeist final act is about to begin and Gotham City will burn. Now that is the end of issue number 3. Now I am loving this series. Issue number 3, was it worth the wait? I would say yes, but I do not want to wait the same amount of time for issue number 4. So hopefully we get that sometime soon, maybe during the summer, hopefully not too long after. But I'm really excited to see the conclusion of this, and I really hope they have plans to extend this version of the Batman universe. And if you like this video, you love the story, by all means say what you love the most about it in the comment section down below. Like, share, subscribe, all that other kind of stuff. I really appreciate you guys. I thank you so much for watching. I have more on the way. Always remember to support your local comic and game shops, and I will see you guys next time.